Deep in the wild heart of California's backcountry lies one of the most iconic places on Earth, Yosemite National Park. But beneath its postcard beauty, the truth of this place is far darker than anyone dares to admit. Hidden deep within Yosemite's vast wilderness is a region even stranger still. A place called Tuolumne Meadows. People speak of its peace, the endless fields of golden grass, the rivers so clear they seem unreal, the granite domes that blaze like fire as the sun sinks behind the peaks. It's a vision of perfection and a perfect lie, because no one talks about what happens when night falls. They don't mention the flickering lights that drift along the water's edge, or the seasoned hikers who abandon their camps without a trace, never to be seen again. And they certainly don't speak of the countless disappearances that plague this land year after year. Tuolumne Meadows feels alive, as if it watches, waits, and hunts. And we had no idea just how dangerous it really was, until we arrived. If you're a regular viewer of the channel, please like the video. If this is your first time here, consider subscribing. Around the time I was 21, I was living in the LA County area, just kind of floating. I took on odd jobs, worked whenever I could find it, just trying to get by. I didn't have a solid group of friends out there, not the kind you could really count on. So I had to actively seek them out. My method, which might sound a bit silly, but it was effective, was to sign up for things like recreational basketball leagues. Honestly, it's the simplest way for an adult guy to meet people. It was on one of those courts, under the hum of fluorescent lights, that I met a kid named Cody. From the moment we started talking, we just clicked. It was effortless. We began hanging out away from the basketball court, and I learned he was a student at USC, which was only a 20-minute drive from my place. It felt like perfect timing, like things were finally falling into place. Because our friendship had formed so quickly and felt so natural, it was inevitable that we'd start planning bigger things, more exciting excursions. We wanted to do more than just grab a beer or shoot hoops. And the one idea we kept circling back to, the one that really got us excited, was a weekend camping trip in Yosemite. Cody had done a bit of camping when he was younger, but he admitted it had been a long, long time. As for me, I was practically vibrating with the need for an adventure. I was craving it, so the moment he brought it up, I was all in. "Dude," I said, "I'm so down. Let's make it happen." We spent the next couple of months planning it out. Since he was buried in his university coursework, and I was navigating my own hectic work schedule, we had to find the perfect window. We landed on early September, just before his classes got intense and my job's busy season began. It was our one shot. With the date locked in for early September, we started gathering our gear: the tent, sleeping bags, a small camp stove, all of it. The plan was for Cody to swing by my apartment around 5 in the morning, giving us a head start on the traffic for the long drive up. I was so keyed up I barely slept a wink the night before. Finally, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Cody. "I'm downstairs." I snatched my backpack, did a final check for all my essentials, and headed out of my apartment. As I stepped outside, I saw that Cody's car wasn't empty. There was someone in the passenger seat. At first, a flicker of excitement went through me. Cool, who else is coming? The more the merrier, I thought. But then, as I walked to the back door and pulled it open, the face that turned to look at me was one that, I'll be honest, I despised. It was a kid named Mason. I'm not going to sit here and try to be diplomatic about it. I can't stand him. And the sight of him in that passenger seat, his very presence, instantly soured my entire weekend. My stomach just dropped. I made an effort to stay positive. I really did. But to understand why this was such a big deal, you need to understand the history between me and this guy. Back when I was about 8 years old, living in Chicago, completely on the other side of the country, there was this one specific summer. A summer where, every single morning, I woke up with a singular purpose. I would walk to the local park, I would find that one kid who always made it his business to pick on me, and we would fight. Every single day, like clockwork. It sounds completely absurd, I know, but I'm sure there are plenty of guys out there who had those strange, unspoken rivalries with other kids in their neighborhood and will get what I mean. Well, for me, that kid was Mason. So what on earth was he doing in the passenger seat of Cody's car? All these years later, all the way across the country in California? It was a bizarre, small world moment that I could have lived without. A few weeks prior, Cody had invited me to a family barbecue. As I was looking across his backyard, I saw a face that was disturbingly familiar. The guy walked over, a big smug grin on his face, and said, "Long time, no see." I was just standing there, my brain struggling to place him. He chuckled, "You don't remember me?" and playfully punched my shoulder. Then he turned to Cody and said, "Me and this guy used to have some epic scraps back in the day." And just like that, it all came flooding back. This was the kid. The same kid I had fought every day for an entire month, 15 years ago. As an adult, my initial reaction was to laugh it off. "Wow, water under the bridge. That's hilarious," I said. "What are you doing here?" He properly introduced himself then, the first time I'd ever actually heard his name, since he'd only ever been my childhood nemesis. "I'm Mason," he said. "I'm Cody's cousin." Suddenly, it all made sense. I remembered that one day I showed up at the park, ready for our daily showdown, and he just wasn't there. I never saw him again until that barbecue. His family must have moved back to California. It was a bizarre coincidence. At first, I didn't feel any real animosity toward him. We were just kids doing stupid kid things. But deep down, a little voice in the back of my head whispered, "I really don't like this guy." And as that barbecue went on, all the reasons for my dislike started to resurface. Our personalities were like oil and water. They just didn't mix. Still, we were adults now, so I was determined to be civil. I never expected to see him again outside of that one family gathering. It was just a strange anecdote to laugh about. Can you believe you're related to him? What are the odds he lived in my old neighborhood and we had this whole thing? It was a funny story. Right up until he was sitting in the passenger seat of the car, about to hijack the weekend I had been looking forward to for months. The only thing I could manage to say to Cody in that moment was, "Oh, are we dropping him off somewhere? What's the deal?" Cody then explained, so casually it was infuriating, that Mason and his mother had been visiting the previous night. He'd mentioned to Mason that he and I were heading to Yosemite in the morning, and Mason apparently took that as a personal invitation. He just decided, "Dude, I'll tag along," utterly unprepared. He had a few clothes and a small backpack, and Cody had some spare gear, but he had essentially just forced his way into our well-planned trip with only a few hours' notice. As I sat in the back seat, simmering, I tried to salvage my mood. I told myself to give Mason another chance. Maybe our childhood feud could become a funny story we'd look back on. Maybe this trip was where we would actually become friends. I was so incredibly excited for this weekend that I refused to let his presence derail it completely. At least, that's what I told myself. But as we started the drive, just a couple of hours in, I was filled with a sense of dread. Every minute was a struggle. I truly disliked Mason. I'm sorry, but there's no other way to put it. He was just not my kind of person. I clenched my jaw and endured the entire drive, suffering through his terrible taste in music, the bass thumping relentlessly against the back of my seat with a complete lack of consideration for me sitting right there. I kept thinking that maybe, just maybe, things would get better once we were out of the confines of the car, once he no longer had control over the stereo. So we finally arrived. We reached the campsite near Tuolumne Meadows. As we started to unpack the car and walk around, saying hello to the other campers, I noticed the park wasn't as crowded as it typically is in the summer. The cooler September air had thinned the herds. We got signed in, filled out all the required paperwork, and made our way to our designated spot. And to my surprise, he was actually starting to grow on me just a little. He was being helpful, setting things up without being asked. He seemed genuinely happy to be there, even striking up conversations with other people at the campground. We fell into a conversation with a friendly father who was there with his kids. He was a really nice, approachable guy, and he asked us about our plans for the weekend, what trails we were hoping to hike. Naturally, we told him about our plan for the day, a short, easy trail called the River Access Trail, just to get our legs warmed up. Then we mentioned our bigger objective, the Lyle Canyon Trail leading to Donahue Pass. We explained it was a longer, more challenging route that we expected to take us about 2 days. The father seemed enthusiastic about our day one hike, but when we brought up Donahue Pass, his expression shifted. He looked concerned. He glanced back at his kids, who were playing nearby, and then leaned in a bit. "I don't know if I'd head out that way if I were you guys," he said quietly. "We had a bit of a scare last night. We had to turn back this morning. We didn't even make it." Of course, our minds immediately went to the usual culprits. "Did you see a bear?" we asked. "Is the trail icy? More snow up there? Just bad conditions?" We were trying to guess what kind of normal wilderness danger had sent him packing. But the father shook his head and lowered his voice even more, leaning closer. "I don't want to talk about it too loud around the kids," he whispered. "They were pretty shaken up. They seemed better this morning, but double quotes." He paused. "There was a guy out there. He was messing with us." We were all a bit confused. The park was full of people. Why would some random person single out a family and harass them? It was just a father and his children on a camping trip. What kind of creep would bother them? That's exactly what we said to him. Why would anyone do that? That's when I saw the genuine fear in the father's eyes. This wasn't just an overreaction. He was truly rattled. "I don't know what his deal was," he said, his voice strained. "I don't know what he was on, but the man was acting completely bizarre, and he just kept approaching my family." We pressed him for more details. "Did he do anything? Did he threaten you or the kids? Did he seem like he was on drugs?" We were trying to get a handle on the situation. The father shook his head again. "The only thing he did," he explained, "was approach us and then run away. But he did it over and over and over again, all day long." He described how, as his family was hiking, he'd spot the man in the far distance, approaching them. He was always off trail, appearing from behind hills or out of thickets of trees. It was clear he was just out there in the meadows, somewhere, watching them. The father said the man would walk slowly, deliberately, right up to his family, stopping about 20 or 30 feet away. Then he would just stand there, silent, and stare. When the father would finally call out, "Hey man, what's your problem? What are you doing?" the guy would instantly turn and sprint away, and he wouldn't just jog off. He would bolt, running full speed into the distance until he was a tiny speck and then vanished from sight completely. An hour or so later, after they'd continued their hike, he would reappear from a totally different direction, as if he'd sprinted a huge circle around them just to approach and do the exact same thing all over again. He repeated this routine the entire day. The dad estimated it happened 4 or 5 times. By the 5th time, it felt incredibly threatening. Why was he so fixated on their family? Why was he getting so close? We asked if he had reported it to the park rangers. "I told anyone who would listen," he said. "They sent some people out to look for him, but I haven't heard anything back. We're definitely not going in that direction again. We're just staying here at the main campsite where there are more people. If he shows up here, there's no way he's getting away." We asked if the man seemed dangerous. "I don't know," he replied. There was just something vacant about him. His eyes were completely dead. We asked for a description of his appearance, what he was wearing. The father told us he was just a regular-looking white guy in a gray jacket and hiking pants. There was nothing distinctive about him at all. He could have been any other hiker in the park. The story was strange, for sure, but not entirely unbelievable. Our theory was that he was probably some guy in his mid-20s, maybe tripping on mushrooms and just acting weird in the meadows. We could certainly understand why a father with young children would be freaked out and decide to turn back. But we were three young guys, all in our early 20s. We weren't particularly worried about a strange man who just approached, stared, and then ran away. It was bizarre, but it wasn't going to deter us from our plans. We'd definitely keep an eye out for him, but it wasn't a deal breaker for us. We weren't about to confine ourselves to the campsite for the entire weekend. We didn't have any kids to worry about. So after finishing our setup and getting some food in us, we set off on that short warm-up hike around the campground, just to stretch our legs after the long car ride. The trail was only about an hour and a half long, and the scenery was stunning. It's an incredibly diverse landscape, with rocky outcrops, dense forests, clear streams, and massive granite formations looming in the distance. The place is absolutely beautiful. We were strolling along, having a good time, chatting a bit, but mostly just soaking in the majestic views of Yosemite. We came to a spot with a lovely, clear stream flowing over smooth rocks. We made our way down to its edge, hopping from stone to stone along the bank, just enjoying the peacefulness of it all. There was hardly anyone else around. It felt like our own private corner of the park. We had all kind of spread out, lost in our own thoughts. Then, in the distance, I noticed Mason. He was hunched over by the water's edge, fiddling with something. He was moving rocks, and then he started pulling and yanking at something that was lodged. Curious, I started walking over to see what he was up to. He planted his feet firmly in the dirt, got some leverage, and gave one final powerful tug. A backpack, heavy and dripping with water, came loose from under a large rock. I glanced over at Cody, who had seen it too. We both started walking towards Mason. Now, finding a random backpack in a stream inside a national park is almost never a good sign. It's a red flag. It means someone lost their gear. Our immediate thought was that we'd get to Mason and he'd say, "Guys, we have to report this." Someone could be lost out here without their supplies. They could be in real trouble. It could have been an accident, but like I said, it's a bad omen. But before we even reached him, Mason had already unzipped the pack and was digging through its contents. Just like I said, it's those little things about him that drive me crazy. A normal, considerate person's mind would jump to the conclusion that this is someone's lost property and we should try to return it. His mind, however, went straight to, ooh, free stuff. Let's see what's inside. So, I was already annoyed as he had his hands buried in this person's belongings. Cody, reading my expression, said, "Dude, what are you doing going through their stuff? We should take this back to the rangers." Mason just scoffed. "Dude, look at it. It's filthy. Nobody's coming back for this. They must have lost it ages ago." We were like, it was stuck under a rock in a stream. Of course it's muddy. Someone could have accidentally dropped it. They could be in serious danger. By then, he had already turned the backpack upside down and shaken all of its contents out onto the ground. "See?" he said. "Nobody is missing this junk. They obviously just threw it away." He had already made up his mind. Cody and I just exchanged an exasperated look. But as we looked at the pile of contents on the ground, we saw he might have a point. There wasn't much in there. It wasn't packed with food, water, survival gear, or anything that would spell disaster if lost. There were only 3 items inside. Our annoyance began to subside a little, because he was probably right. It was unlikely anyone was desperately searching for these things. One of the items was a journal of some kind. He tossed it to me. "Here, you look through it," he commanded. I sighed and took the journal. It was soaked and grimy, but there was something odd about it. I opened the first few pages, and the cursive handwriting looked normal enough. But as I flipped towards the middle, I noticed something strange. It seemed the writer had started from the front and written towards the center, but then, at some point, they had flipped the book over and started writing from the back page, also towards the center. And the handwriting from the back was completely different. So either two people shared this journal, or it was some kind of strange art project, a sort of parallel writing experiment. It was weird, but given its condition, I didn't dwell on it. The second item was a peculiar small bandana. It was only about 2 inches wide, clearly designed to be worn around the head or an arm, some kind of headband or armband. It looked like it was made of leather, or maybe some sort of animal hide. Right in the center was a small, strange symbol. If you wore it on your forehead, the symbol would be right in the middle. If you wore it on your arm, it would look like a bicep patch. The leather was a very pale, almost white color. And Mason, in his typical fashion, thought it was the coolest thing he'd ever seen. He has these strange impulses. He immediately wrapped it around his own forehead and tied it in a knot at the back. The thing was still damp and caked with mud, but he was grinning, thinking he looked amazing. But I knew something was genuinely wrong when I looked up and saw what Cody was holding. It was the third and final item from the bag. It was muddy and waterlogged, but beneath all the grime, I could clearly see that it was a gray jacket. It was the exact item the father, back at the campsite, had described the strange man wearing when he was terrorizing his family. After some arguing, we finally persuaded Mason that we needed to take these items back to the camp and inform the rangers that we had found what likely belonged to the strange man who had been harassing the family. Mason reluctantly agreed. "Fine," he said, "but I'm keeping the headband." Cody and I just looked at each other and sighed. "Okay, dude, whatever you want." We just wanted to get the backpack, the journal, and especially the jacket back so it could be matched to the man from the sighting. We started the short walk back. When we arrived at the campsite, we immediately sought out the staff in charge. We were introduced to a ranger named Haskins. He was a really good guy, helpful, knowledgeable, and seemed genuinely committed to helping us. He was already aware of the incident with the family from the previous day. He took the backpack, the journal, and the jacket from us. Since we were heading out to Donahue Pass the next morning, he made sure to provide us with a radio. It was a direct line to him and the other staff working in that area. This definitely made us feel more secure. Having a direct means of communication, in case we ran into trouble or spotted the guy again, gave us a renewed sense of confidence about our plans. We all felt a bit safer. So, after a good night's sleep, we woke up bright and early, ready for the long hike ahead. We were all excited, drinking our morning coffee, getting our energy up with some carbs. I was genuinely trying my best to get along with Mason. I really was. But then I saw him as he was getting ready that morning. He was still wearing that grimy, leather-like headband, strutting around like he was some kind of anime character. He was clearly proud of it, joking around and acting as if we found it as cool as he did. We just thought it was weird and a little gross that he'd put it on in the first place. But that was just Mason being Mason. I tried to push it out of my mind and focus on the day. We shouldered our packs and began our hike. The first hour or two were absolutely breathtaking. We were still near the meadows, and as we reached the trailhead, the scenery was just unbelievable. We were having a fantastic time. Yosemite is, without a doubt, one of the most beautiful places in the entire country, especially in the autumn. But it's incredibly difficult to appreciate that kind of beauty when you're in the company of someone like Mason. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. All his worst qualities began to surface on that trail. Every single thing that used to irritate me as an 8-year-old, he started doing again. It was like he had been consciously suppressing his true personality, or his true feelings about me, until we were isolated and in the middle of nowhere. All the old habits came back, repeating what we said in a mocking tone, being condescending and dismissive. Every attempt at a normal conversation was twisted into a series of personal insults and jabs. In his world, someone always had to be the butt of the joke. There was no room for genuine discussion. It felt like every thought and opinion had to be filtered through Mason's cynical worldview, and we were forced to exist in his pessimistic, judgmental reality, which is utterly draining to be around. Here's a perfect example. I started to tell Cody about a trip I'd once taken to Pennsylvania. Mason cut me off mid-sentence. "Yeah," he sneered. "You seem like the kind of guy who would visit a place like Pennsylvania." I was baffled. What's that even supposed to mean? I'm the kind of guy? You've never even been there. What possible frame of reference do you have to make fun of me for that? I swear to you, everything we talked about, sports, family, relationships, the news, was contorted into this bizarre, antagonistic style of conversation that was grating on my last nerve. Imagine being on the most magnificent hike of your life, surrounded by stunning beauty, but having this persistent, annoying gnat of a person buzzing in your ear, preventing you from enjoying a single moment of it. Cody was just as fed up as I was. We kept exchanging glances over Mason's head, our expressions saying, "What is wrong with him this morning? Why on earth did we let him come?" And this was his own cousin. At one point, Cody leaned in and whispered to me. "I've honestly never seen him act like this before." I whispered back, "I have. I told you we had a complicated past. This is the Mason I remember." Of course, Cody was immediately apologetic. "Dude, I am so sorry. I never should have brought him." All the while, Mason was trailing just a few feet behind us, trying to eavesdrop on our conversation, just being a complete weirdo. We genuinely tried to reason with him. We pulled him aside. "Hey, man," we said, trying to be encouraging. "You don't have to see things so negatively. Can we just have a normal conversation? Can we just enjoy where we are?" But it was like talking to a statue. Nothing we said got through to him. Eventually, I just gave up. I started to walk a bit faster, putting some distance between us. I didn't want to be anywhere near him, and neither did Cody. We decided, okay, he's with us, and we can't just abandon him in the wilderness. But if he's going to be this combative and ruin every conversation, we have to tell him, as adults, that his behavior is making this an awful experience. We told him he was ruining our time. And you know what he did? He thought it was hilarious. He just smiled. He had the look of a mischievous child who had just discovered a new way to annoy adults and was relishing it. So we took the high road. We started to pointedly ignore him. We gave him the cold shoulder, and we told him exactly why we were doing it. This wasn't some petty, passive-aggressive move. We said, if you continue to act this way, we are going to ignore you. And he did. He kept it up. So much so that when we finally stopped responding to his taunts and started treating him like he didn't exist, he escalated. As we tried to walk ahead of him, he would run up right behind me and start kicking the back of my foot, clipping my heel as I walked. Picture it. Every time you take a step and your heel lifts off the ground, he would kick you in the arch of your foot. He did it over and over. I'd speed up to get away from him, shouting, "What are you doing? Leave me alone." He'd back off for a minute or two. I'd start talking to Cody again, and then, thwack, another kick to the arch of my foot. I looked at Cody, my patience completely gone. "Dude, I am so sick of this. I'm not putting up with it anymore." As I was saying this, just as I was telling Cody, I was at my breaking point and about to sprint a mile ahead just to get away from him. He did it again. But this time, he kicked the side of my foot, causing my back foot to swing across and trip my front foot. He timed it perfectly, and he kicked hard, right as I was stepping over a large rock. I went down, face first, onto the trail. My hands were in my pockets because of the slight chill in the air, so I had no way to break my fall. I tried to yank them out, but it was too late. My face slammed into the hard, gravelly ground. The high road was gone. In that instant, it felt like I was transported back in time, back to that elementary school playground on a hot summer day. I woke up that morning, and in my mind, I was like, today, I'm going to go beat the crap out of Mason. I scrambled to my feet, and I didn't even think. All I saw was red. This wasn't the first time we'd fought. It wasn't the 5th, or even the 10th. And I just went for him. He absolutely had it coming. He deserved every bit of it. I was filled with a pure, childish rage. This kid was here, actively ruining my weekend. But we were both weighed down by our hiking gear and heavy backpacks. It devolved into more of a clumsy wrestling match than a real fight. We weren't throwing clean punches. We were just tangled up. I got him in a front headlock and started driving my fist into his ribs. We were rolling around on the dusty trail like a couple of 8-year-olds. But he was much bigger than me now. And as I was hitting him, he was laughing. Actually laughing out loud, as if he was thrilled to have provoked this reaction from me. So, I decided to pull his hoodie up and over his head, blinding him so he couldn't see my punches coming. I held him down by the hood while he flailed his arms around, trying to grab my legs. Then, something strange happened. I realized I might have gone too far. I hit him one more time in the ribs, and his whole body just went limp. All the fight went out of him. It was weird, because I wasn't hitting him in the head or face. Even in my rage, I wasn't trying to seriously injure him. He was still Cody's cousin, after all. I was just trying to make him understand how furious I was. But as I held his hood down and landed that last body shot, he just collapsed. I pulled the hood off his face to see what had happened. That stupid leather headband had finally come off. I could see he was developing a rash on his forehead where it had been tied. He was completely limp. Cody rushed over and pushed me off him, shouting, "Dude, come on. What are we doing?" We rolled Mason onto his back. "Hey, man," we said, lightly slapping his cheeks, trying to rouse him. But he wasn't waking up. A wave of panic washed over me. I knew I hadn't hit him that hard. Nothing I did should have knocked him out cold. I'd punched him in the ribs. I wasn't choking him. I hadn't hit his head or his temple. Nothing. But he was lying there, starting to seize slightly. Finally, his eyes fluttered open. He took a huge, gasping breath and immediately started playing the victim. Cody was leaning over him, asking, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Mason was whimpering, clutching Cody's arm. "What happened? What happened?" He mumbled. I was staring at him with pure disgust, convinced he was faking the whole thing. I knew how hard I'd hit him. He was a grown man. It shouldn't have fazed him like that. Now he was trying to paint me as the villain. I was just waiting for him to glance at me when Cody wasn't looking and give me a little smirk, a silent, "I got you." But he never did. He kept up the act, even reaching a hand out towards me. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice trembling. "What happened?" It was getting stranger and stranger because he sounded genuinely sincere towards me. That was the most bizarre part. Faking sincerity for Cody's benefit, I could understand, but turning to me and asking, "Hey, what's going on? Are you okay? I'm sorry," and sounding so utterly convincing. It was so believable, so completely convincing, that I started to question everything. Maybe he was bipolar. Maybe I was the bad guy all along. Maybe he had a genuine mental health issue, and I was just an angry person with no self-control. I had never witnessed someone switch personalities so drastically, so completely, in a matter of minutes. My anger began to morph into genuine concern. From my perspective, it no longer felt like an act. He seemed truly shaken. I must have actually hurt him. Perhaps he had been in some kind of manic state before, unable to control his actions, and now he had no memory of what had happened. We helped him to his feet. He was breathing shallowly, like he was in shock. He picked up the headband and stuffed it into his pocket. We helped him get his backpack on, and I straightened my own jacket. We asked him, Are you okay to keep hiking?" He nodded weakly. "I think so." His entire demeanor had changed. Just 5 minutes before, he had been this arrogant, insufferable bully I despised. Now he seemed like a fragile, scared little kid. A wave of guilt washed over me. "Oh my God," I thought. "I can't believe I was just holding his hood over his head and punching him in the ribs a few minutes ago." I felt absolutely terrible. But his behavior for the next hour was a complete 180. After that strange episode, he seemed fine. He was drinking his water, and we all started talking and actually laughing together. I found myself thinking, okay, I can get along with this version of Mason. He's actually friendly and insightful. He was full of random, interesting facts about all sorts of things. He spoke softly and gently. He asked me genuine questions about my life, like he actually wanted to get to know me. I thought, well, I guess that's all it took. We had to have a little fight. He had to have his little breakdown, and now he's the nicest guy in the world. I could finally see why Cody was fond of him. About an hour later, as he was asking me a really thoughtful question, and we were all genuinely enjoying each other's company, I happened to look over his shoulder, and I saw someone approaching in the distance. This person was emerging from a dense patch of woods, far off the trail, and was walking with a clear purpose, directly towards us. I pointed it out to the others. "Hey, there's someone coming." We all looked at each other, and the same thought crossed our minds. Oh my God, it's probably him. The figure was beelining straight for us, striding through tall grass and over large rocks, adjusting his path to intercept ours. He was clearly coming for us. We decided to slow down, wait for him to approach, and turn to face him, letting him know we'd seen him. We were 3 grown men. We could handle this. We stopped and watched him walk towards us. He got closer and closer. The details of his face and body grew sharper and clearer. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie 28 Days Later, but in that moment, I felt like I had been dropped right into a scene from it. Because as the man closed the distance, his walk broke into a run. A full-on sprint. He wasn't just jogging. He was running. And he was completely naked. It was like watching a zombie from a movie sprint towards us. I couldn't process what I was seeing, and neither could the others. We braced ourselves for whatever was about to happen. But as he got right up to us, he skidded to a stop about 10 feet away. I looked him over, and I was genuinely worried about his well-being. He was badly sunburned, but he was also shivering, as if he'd been out in the elements all night with no protection. The only thing he was wearing was a pair of hiking boots, and I saw a large, gruesome gash on his left arm. It was a wraparound laceration right around his bicep, like a strip of his skin had been peeled off or torn away. You could see the raw, exposed flesh in a perfect ring around his arm. He was breathing heavily, his chest heaving, and just staring at us. But it wasn't an angry stare. He just looked. Lost. Not lost in the wilderness sense, but mentally lost. His eyes were blank as he stared right through us. We all started asking the obvious questions. Do you need help? Hey man, are you okay? The rangers have been looking for you. Just as Cody was reaching for the radio on his pack to call it in, to say, hey, we found him, the man exploded into action. The instant Cody's thumb pressed the button, the man went into attack mode. He started sprinting at us again, closing the final 10 feet in a blur. Cody and I instinctively backpedaled, trying to get an angle on him. But Mason, who was still rattled from our fight earlier, just froze. He was a deer in the headlights. The man didn't just tackle Mason, he leveled him. It was like watching a predator take down its prey. It wasn't a calculated tackle, like in football. It was as if the man had no regard for his own safety. Like someone running full speed into a brick wall they didn't see. He just slammed his chest into Mason's. Mason, completely unprepared for the impact, was thrown backward. He landed hard on his back, and the naked man was instantly on top of him. And the fact that he was naked, it just makes you hesitate. Your immediate instinct is to jump in and help your friend, but where do you even grab him? It creates this split second of confusion, of what do I do here? Even as we moved in to try and pull him off or hit him, that thought flashes through your mind. Do I really want to get into a wrestling match with a naked man who has a bleeding, open wound on his arm? He looked like he'd been living in the wild for days. All these little details race through your head, and it takes a moment to overcome the hesitation to touch him. I know you understand what I mean, but in that split second, I realized he wasn't actually attacking Mason. He wasn't hitting him or trying to hurt him. He was frantically digging his hands into all of Mason's pockets. Mason was wearing a vest with pockets on the front, and the man was just plunging his hands into them. When Mason rolled onto his side, the man started trying to get into his back cargo pockets. Then, as Mason turned his back completely to try and get up, the man started trying to unzip his backpack, reaching inside. It all happened in a flash, just a second or two, and I understood what he was after. He just wanted food. He wasn't trying to cause bodily harm. He was robbing him. He was shaking him down, desperately checking his pockets for anything. Cody's instincts fired before mine did. And when I say fired, I mean it literally. He delivered a powerful soccer kick right to the man's ribs. The moment Cody's foot made contact, it was like startling a wild animal. There was no retaliation, no attempt to fight back. It was an instantaneous switch from fight to flight. The moment he met resistance, he fled. He got kicked, scrambled to his feet, and was sprinting away before we could even react. I tried to see if he'd managed to grab anything, but his hands looked empty. 1 second he was on top of Mason, tearing through his pockets, and the next he had his back to us, sprinting into the distance. All we could see were his flapjacks disappearing over the horizon. We helped Mason to his feet, and we watched the man run, trying to see where he was going. The father had said he kept coming back, but as we watched him, it seemed increasingly impossible. He just kept running. There were no mountains or dense forests nearby for him to quickly disappear behind. We were in a wide open meadow. You could see for at least a mile. We watched this man sprint, not jogging like a marathon runner, but a full-out dead sprint for what felt like forever. He just kept going and going and going until he was nothing but a tiny dot that eventually vanished behind some distant feature. We timed it. He ran at top speed for nearly 5 minutes straight. As we stood there, stunned, we all had the same thought. How on earth did he do that 4 or 5 times yesterday? The exertion from what he just did would leave a normal person completely exhausted for the rest of the day. And the father said he did it multiple times. It made absolutely no sense. Cody was already on the radio. "Hey, Ranger Haskins, we found him." He got physical with one of us. The ranger's voice crackled back. "Listen, you only have a few hours of daylight left. You should probably set up camp. I'd prefer you to come back in, but if you don't think you can make it in time, you should be all right." We were incredulous. "He attacked us," we repeated. Ranger Haskins replied, "I'll send someone out. If I have to, I'll come myself. Just keep an eye out and radio me if you see him again." So now we had a decision to make. Do we turn back right now? That was an incredibly weird and unsettling experience. We turned to Mason. "How are you feeling? You're the one who just got attacked." That was strange for all of us, but you were the one who bore the brunt of it. But Mason, who had already been through so much that day, surprised us. He said he wanted to keep going. "I want to finish the hike," he insisted. Then he started to process what had just happened. "It didn't feel like he was trying to hurt me," he explained. "Yeah, he ran into me and knocked me down, but once he was on top of me, it just felt like he was trying to steal something. I think he was just looking for food." Suddenly, we felt a pang of pity for the man. We thought, my God, whatever has happened to this guy, whatever psychosis he's experiencing, he can't even communicate. He's running on pure survival instinct. He must have been exhausted, cold, and in pain from his wound and sunburn. He must have felt utterly desperate, but we decided against turning back. We would press on towards Donahue Pass, especially since Ranger Haskins had said he was sending people out. We figured that since we had a radio and could report the incident immediately, they had a much better chance of finding the guy now. They knew his exact location, unlike with the father, where hours had passed before he could report it. We thought we'd be safe. We hiked for a while longer and then found a good spot to make camp for the night as the sun began to dip towards the horizon. It was getting to be dusk. We were preparing our freeze-dried meals when a chill started to set in. I pulled my sweater tighter around my neck and tugged my beanie down over my ears. I looked over at Mason and felt a surge of sympathy. He had a hoodie and pants on, but he had joined this trip completely on a whim. He hadn't packed for the cold. We had given him some extra shirts to layer, but we didn't have a spare hat for him. I could see his ears turning a bright, painful-looking red as the temperature continued to drop. He was clearly suffering. As we sat around the small campfire, which offered some warmth but did little for the stinging cold in our ears, Cody had an idea. "Dude," he said to Mason, "what about the headband?" We all looked at each other. Of course! What a great idea. Mason reached into his front pocket, pulled out the pale leather band, and wrapped it around his forehead again. This time, he tucked his ears underneath it, pulling it tight so they were pressed flat against his head. It probably wasn't the most comfortable, but it would completely cover the tips of his ears and keep them warm. Within minutes, he sighed in relief. "Thank God," he said. "That's so much better." For good measure, we took an extra t-shirt and wrapped it around his head like a turban, just to add another layer of warmth and to keep the headband securely in place. Problem solved. We settled in for the night, feeling a bit more relaxed. We were sharing some laughs, roasting some s'mores we had packed as a treat. After a while, Mason excused himself to go use the bathroom, which was really just a designated tree about 20 feet away from our camp. Cody and I were sitting by the fire, joking about the crazy events of the day. "Wow," we said, "what a day." We were laughing about how Mason had taken 2 serious beatings in the span of just a few hours. And he kind of had it coming, we joked. Just as we were laughing, we heard the sound of footsteps, pounding towards our campsite at a full sprint. We both jumped to our feet, our hearts pounding, convinced the naked man was back. We thought we were about to be attacked again. I couldn't tell which direction the sound was coming from at first, until I caught a flash of movement out of the corner of my eye. It was Mason, sprinting towards us. The expression on his face was one of pure terror, as if something horrible had just happened behind him. His hands were clasped over his ears. He was pumping his knees high, running for his life. And Cody and I were just stunned, because his clothes were gone. He was wearing nothing but his hiking boots and the little t-shirt turban we had made for him. He bolted directly towards us, ran right between us, past the campfire, and kept sprinting into the darkness of the forest beyond, never slowing down. And then Cody and I just burst out laughing. We were practically falling out of our camp chairs, howling with laughter as we watched Mason sprint away. We were absolutely certain that at any moment he was going to stop, turn around with a huge grin on his face, and start laughing hysterically with us. We were completely convinced that he was doing an elaborate bit, all for our amusement. He was mimicking the naked guy from earlier, taking it to the extreme by stripping off his own clothes and sprinting through our camp just to give us a good laugh. And man, he was committed to the bit. He ran with a dead serious, intense expression on his face, zoomed past us without a word, and just kept going in the exact same direction the other guy had gone. Wow, we thought, what a dedicated friend Mason is, to go to such lengths just to make us laugh. We were laughing our heads off, until we saw what he was chasing. In that single instant, all the humor vanished. We knew this wasn't a joke. There was nothing normal about what he was doing, and it certainly wasn't for our entertainment. About 30 feet above Mason's head, suspended in the dark air, was something that made no sense. It looked like a floating light. I can't describe it any other way. It wasn't an orb or a drone. It looked like a single bare light bulb was just hanging in the air. You couldn't see a filament or a source. It was just a small, sparkling point of light, as if someone had plucked a star from the sky and brought it down to within 100 feet of the ground. I knew it wasn't a star, because I could see the dark silhouette of the tree line behind it. The light seemed to be guiding him. It would drift gently to the left or right, and whenever it changed direction, Mason would adjust his path to follow it. I turned to Cody. Do you see that?" I stammered. "What is that?" he whispered back. We cycled through the possibilities. A drone? No, it was definitely not a drone. And why was Mason chasing it? Why was he naked? And why wasn't he stopping? It was as if this little glimmer of light was taunting him, luring him away from the safety of our camp, and Mason was like a moth drawn irresistibly to a flame. Wherever this thing went, he was compelled to follow, pushing himself to his absolute limit to try and catch it. It had been funny for a fleeting moment, but now he was 30 yards away, and we could see the light, and we had no idea what to do. Do we chase after him? Do we abandon our camp and all our supplies? Do we run off the trail into the pitch-black woods? What was that thing? How dangerous was it? In moments like that, you just freeze. Your mind can't process it. We were watching our friend, who just moments before had been shivering and complaining about the cold, now running naked through the woods, acting exactly like the man who had attacked him earlier in the day. We were on our feet now. This was not funny. This was terrifying. "Do we go after him?" Cody asked, his voice trembling. I think we have to," I replied. "If he got too far ahead, if he disappeared from our sight, we would have no chance of finding him on our own in the dark. And we knew that other man was still out there somewhere. And who knew what that light was? We were on the verge of running, about to take off sprinting after him. He already had a 150-yard head start, and he was becoming difficult to see in the fading light. Just as we were about to bolt, the radio crackled to life. A voice, distorted by static, came through, sharp and urgent. "Don't you even think about leaving that campsite." The voice was stern and direct. It was clearly speaking to us, as if whoever was on the other end was watching our every move. We looked back towards the radio. Cody ran over to grab it while I tried to keep my eyes on Mason. Then I saw it. A large figure, moving from left to right, flanking Mason, closing in on him. "What is that?" I yelled to Cody. My eyes felt like they were playing tricks on me. Everything was happening so fast, I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. Cody spoke into the radio, his voice filled with panic. "You have to get him." It was clear he knew who it was. "Who is that?" I shouted at him. He looked at me with an expression that said, "How can you not tell?" "It's Ranger Haskins," he said, and suddenly it all clicked into place. The reason the figure looked so strange and large was because Ranger Haskins wasn't on foot. He was on his horse. That's why he was moving so fast, closing the distance to Mason so quickly. I watched as Ranger Haskins urged his horse into a full gallop, racing to intercept Mason before he could reach the dense tree line ahead. We were squinting into the darkness, trying to see if he could catch him. But Mason was getting dangerously close to a heavily wooded area that sloped up into a rocky hill. There was no way the horse could follow him in there. We held our breath, watching the scene unfold. It was going to be a matter of seconds. The horse was obviously much faster than Mason, but Mason had a significant head start. Just as I thought Ranger Haskins was about to grab him, I realized there was nothing to grab onto. He couldn't reach down and snatch his collar or his shirt. They converged right at the edge of the rocky terrain, the point of no return for the horse. Ranger Haskins made a desperate lunge, swooping down in an attempt to grab Mason's arm or hook him under the chin to stop his momentum. But it was no use. Mason just shrugged him off. The ranger's hand slapped at his arm, maybe briefly grazed his neck, but with no clothing to grip, Mason easily broke free and vanished into the ascending rocky darkness. Ranger Haskins was forced to pull his horse up short, circling around, trying to find a way to follow. Even from a distance, we could see his frustration as he paced back and forth, searching for an entryway into the dense thicket. Cody got back on the radio. "What are you going to do?" he asked. Ranger Haskins's reply was chilling. "He's gone," he said. "I don't think he'll be bothering you again tonight. I'll make camp near you guys, so you won't have to worry." Cody and I were floored. "What are you talking about?" Cody shot back. "We don't have to worry about it? He's with us." There was a pause, and then the ranger's voice came back, laced with confusion. "What are you talking about?" "I thought that was the guy who attacked you earlier." We corrected him immediately. "No, that was the guy who got attacked." We thought he was joking around. Then we saw Ranger Haskins turn his horse and start galloping towards our campsite. As he drew closer, we could see the bewildered and alarmed expression on his face. He reined his horse to a stop, looking down at us. "Where is your friend?" he demanded. We explained it to him again. That was our friend. He went to the bathroom, then came sprinting through our camp with no clothes on and just took off. Ranger Haskins stared at us in disbelief. "Are you telling me," he said slowly, "that the man I just chased into those woods is a different person from the one you reported attacking you earlier today?" "Yes," we both exclaimed. "That's our friend. He's with us." He looked at us like we were crazy. Then why was their description identical? "Are you two messing with me?" He was starting to sound accusatory, and we were struggling to convince him of the bizarre truth we had just witnessed. In desperation, the only thing we could say was, "Look, I know this sounds insane, but we have to go find him. It's going to freeze tonight. He won't survive." Ranger Haskins just sat there on his horse for a moment, taking deep breaths, clearly trying to decide what to tell us, what to do. I couldn't wait any longer. I cut through his thoughts. "We have to go look for him right now," I said, and I started walking in the direction Mason had disappeared. Now that a ranger was with us, we had resources. We could go off trail, but he immediately spurred his horse to block my path. "We can't do that," he said firmly. "It's not safe. I'll call my guys to come look for him." Cody immediately pushed back. "So we're just supposed to wait 2 hours for backup to get here? He's right over there. We can go look for him together right now." Ranger Haskins shook his head. "My horse can't go where he went." We both stared at him. "Your feet can," we said in unison, "and so can ours. Let's get moving." We started to walk around his horse, determined to go with or without him, knowing he wouldn't just let us go alone. And we were right. His entire demeanor shifted. He went from being authoritative and withholding to almost pleading with us not to go. He dismounted his horse. "You guys don't understand?" he said. "There's something else going on out here." But we were out of time. Mason was getting further away with every second we wasted. So Cody laid it on the line. "Are you going to have one missing hiker on your hands tonight?" he asked calmly. "Or are you going to have 3? That did it. Ranger Haskins tied up his horse and started to follow us. He was still fumbling for words, trying to explain why we couldn't go looking for him tonight, but he couldn't seem to articulate the reason. So I asked him directly, "Did you see that light he was chasing?" I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. He had been hoping we hadn't seen it. "That," he said, his voice grim, "is exactly why we can't follow him." But we kept walking towards the woods where Mason had vanished, looking back at him. "What are you talking about? What is it about that little floating light that means we can't go save our friend right now? What is it?" I could see the ranger's mind racing, his eyes darting around as he tried to come up with a convincing lie. Finally, he settled on, I have no idea." "You have no idea?" We shot back. "Then why are you trying so hard to stop us from saving our friend? Why are you acting like it's the end of the world that we saw the thing he was chasing?" Cody was thinking the same thing. "If you have no idea," he said, "then let's go find out." Ranger Haskins's reply was ominous. "You don't want to find out. We're going to find out," I insisted. Then I pressed him further. "If you're supposed to call for help, why haven't you done it already? Why aren't you on that radio right now, telling people someone is missing in the park?" I knew we had him cornered. He had no good answers for us, so he resorted to negotiating. It was clear his initial plan was to just let Mason go, to write him off as a lost cause. Whatever that light was, it had convinced him that Mason was beyond saving. He started to bargain with us. "We can look for him for 1 hour," he proposed. "But if we don't find him in that hour, you have to promise me you'll come back." We were appalled. "What do you mean? We're not going to call a search party? We're just going to give up?" He doubled down. "If we don't find him in the first hour, we're not going to find him at all." We had no choice but to play along, at least for now. We didn't want to go out there completely alone, so we started to haggle. "Make it 3 hours, we said. "We'll search until midnight. If we haven't found him by then, we'll head back." He countered with 2. We were now in a ridiculous argument over minutes, wasting precious time. Finally, we agreed. "Okay, 2 hours. Start your timer the moment we enter the woods where he disappeared." Our private plan was that once we were out there, we'd have more leverage. We could just refuse to leave, and he couldn't abandon us. But just before we stepped into the dense tree line, he had one final condition, and he delivered it with deadly seriousness. "If we see one of those lights, we run." That confirmed it for me. He knew exactly what those lights were. He had lied to us. "What do you mean? You have no idea what it is, but if we see one, we have to flee." He was deliberately keeping crucial information from us. By this point, Cody and I were beyond frustrated. We were wasting time with these negotiations while our friend was out there, exposed to the freezing cold, after having the worst day of his life. We told him, "If you see one of those lights, you can run. We're going to find our friend." We were calling his bluff, assuming he wouldn't dare leave us out there alone. He got very serious then, because he knew exactly what we were doing. He knew we thought he wouldn't abandon us. He stopped us one last time. "We have 2 hours, he said, his voice low and firm. "And I promise you, I will leave you out here. If we see one of those lights, you are on your own. I will not come back for you." That sent a chill down my spine. He wasn't bluffing. He wasn't going to tell us what the lights were, but he was being crystal clear about how he would react if we encountered them. He was making us understand that we were heading off trail into the darkness of Yosemite National Park, and he would abandon us without a second thought, just as he was prepared to do with Mason. It was a risk we had to take. We stepped into the area where we had last seen Mason. We were immediately on a steep uphill climb. As I said, it was rocky and dense with trees and undergrowth. Within 5 minutes, we were completely out of breath. This was not an easy trek. The idea that Mason had been running through this terrain seemed impossible. There was no way he could have gotten very far. Our legs were already burning as we scrambled over the rocks and pushed through the foliage. This was rugged, unforgiving country. This fact actually gave us a small sliver of hope. We knew Mason wasn't in the same physical condition as the naked man from earlier. That guy seemed to have been running for days, fueled by some kind of psychosis. Mason hadn't seriously exercised in months. Even if he was in a similar state of mind, his body simply couldn't keep up. He would have to give out soon. We were confident we would find him within the hour. The ranger had his powerful flashlight out, cutting a beam through the growing darkness. He thankfully had a spare for me, and Cody used the light on his phone. But it gets incredibly dark out there. The ranger's flashlight was the only one that really made a difference. We all ended up following its beam, which illuminated the path about 20 or 30 feet ahead of us. Logically, we should have spread out to cover more ground, but the oppressive darkness kept us huddled together, almost shoulder to shoulder. We were terrified of getting separated and lost ourselves. With every step we took, we could feel the distance between us and the safety of our campsite growing. The darkness made everything feel heavier, more menacing. We knew how dangerous it was out here, and our supplies, our shelter, and the ranger's horse were getting further and further away. I found myself silently praying that Mason had the worst cardiovascular endurance in human history. I was hoping his body had just given out, that we would find him passed out from exhaustion, just around the next bend. But we walked for 20 minutes, then 30. We saw nothing. By then, it was pitch black. The stars and the moon offered a little bit of light through the canopy, but it wasn't much to go on. He wasn't wearing any clothes that could have snagged on branches, so there were no signs of his passing. I was starting to think Ranger Haskins was right. 1 hour. If we didn't find him in 1 hour, we needed to go back. The sense of danger was growing with every passing second. I finally brought it up to him. "Dude," I said to the ranger, "can you please radio for backup? I don't think we're going to find him on our own." My confidence was gone, and I could tell Cody felt it too. I glanced at him, worried he might argue, but his eyes were filled with the same concern. "I don't think this is going to work," he admitted. But Ranger Haskins just repeated what he had said before. "We're already out here. But if we don't find him in the next hour, we're not going to find him." He said it with such finality. And now, deep in these dense, steep, rocky woods, I believed him. All our earlier bravado, our tough negotiations, had evaporated. I was ready to turn back whenever they were. We weren't even covering that much ground. The terrain was exhausting us. Every second that passed after that conversation, I was tempted to be the first one to suggest heading back. I had to tell myself, just make it to the 1 hour mark. Then you can live with yourself. We gave it an hour. If he's not found, if the worst happens, at least we tried. And once we were back at the camp, we could pressure Haskins into calling for a real search party, whether he wanted to or not. Cody must have been on the same wavelength, because he was the first to break the silence. "Guys," he said, his voice heavy, "I don't think this is a good idea. We need help." Ranger Haskins suddenly froze. "He's right there," he whispered. "Guys, don't move." We looked at him and followed the beam of his flashlight. There, about 10 feet away, was a paleback hunched over in front of a large tree. The figure had its left hand braced against the tree trunk and was clearly carving something into the bark. We had found him, and within the first hour, we started to move towards him slowly, cautiously. We didn't want to startle him. We fanned out, trying to surround him in case he tried to run. I could hear the scratching sound of something being carved, but I couldn't see what tool he was using. Ranger Haskins moved to the left. I stayed directly behind the figure, and Cody flanked him from the right. We had him boxed in. I waited for the ranger to say something. I wasn't going to be the one to shout, "Hey, Mason." I wanted the person with the authority to be the one to try and reach him. As we crept closer, Taking slow, deliberate steps, we held our hands up in a non-threatening gesture. I was staring at the pale back, illuminated by the flashlight, and a strange feeling crept over me. I didn't recognize it. The figure must have known we were there, because it raised its left arm, as if to tell Ranger Haskins to stop. And in the beam of the flashlight, I saw it. A perfect, circular, wraparound laceration around the person's bicep. And in that horrifying instant, I knew. This wasn't Mason. We all froze, waiting for someone to make the next move. I looked at Ranger Haskins. He was looking at me, trying to get information, and he gestured with his chin towards the man. He mouthed the words, "Is this him?" I shook my head emphatically. No. I assumed he was asking if this was Mason. "This is not Mason," I mouthed back. "This is the guy from before, the one who attacked Mason." The man still had his hand raised, and he was still carving into the tree. He slowly straightened up and turned to face Ranger Haskins. And for the first time, I heard him speak. "You're not looking for me," he said, his voice raspy. Ranger Haskins replied, "And you know who I am looking for?" The man nodded. "Yes," he said. "The man who stole my skin?" I exchanged a bewildered look with Cody. What was this guy talking about? The man who stole my skin? Mason hadn't stolen anything from him. This guy had appeared out of nowhere, attacked Mason, tried to rob him, and then fled. I took a few steps to the side, trying to get out of the man's direct line of sight so I could see what he had been carving into the tree. He saw me move, and his head snapped towards me. It was as if he read my mind, and he felt the need to justify his actions. "They keep me safe," he said, as if I were judging his handiwork. I peeked around him and saw what it was. He had carved a simple but strange symbol, an X with a single dot in the space between each line. Then he started chanting it, over and over. "They keep me safe. They keep me safe. They keep me safe." Ranger Haskins cut him off. "We're going to get you out of here," he said, stepping into his official role. "We're going to make sure you're safe. We found you. It's going to be okay." Then he looked at the man's naked, shivering body. "Can someone get this guy some clothes?" he asked. Cody, startled, fumbled in his backpack for some extra clothing. Not knowing what else to do, he just tossed a shirt and some pants at the man's feet. The man looked down at the clothes with an expression of pure disgust. "I don't need clothing," he spat. "I need my skin. They'll never choose me if I don't have my skin." The three of us just looked at each other, completely lost. We had found a man deep in a psychotic break. But this wasn't the man we were looking for. This guy seemed like a hopeless case. But Mason was still out here somewhere, so we asked him, "Hey, have you seen our friend? We think you might have met him earlier today." The guy didn't seem like he was going to run. He was standing there quite calmly. He turned his head slowly to look at Cody, who had asked the question. His expression was one of disgust, or maybe jealousy. "Yes," he said, his voice dripping with resentment. "They chose him. He's changing now." Ranger Haskins immediately followed up, as Cody was too dumbfounded to speak. "Who chose him?" the ranger asked. "Did the lights choose him?" And I thought, I knew it. This guy knows more about the lights than he let on. The man replied, "Yes, he's more compatible." I tried to read Ranger Haskins's face to see if this meant anything to him, but he looked as confused as I felt. So I decided to ask my own question. Compatible with what? I asked. This seemed to be the wrong thing to say. My question was the one that finally set him off. He turned on me, his voice filled with a nasty, condescending tone. "Compatible with my skin," he snarled. "Aren't you listening?" Before I could even process his bizarre and hostile response, Cody asked, "Do you know where he is? Can you take us to him?" The man looked around vaguely. "He should be right over there," he said, nodding his head towards a spot a little further up the hill. Cody repeated his question. "Can you take us to him?" The man shook his head. "No," he said. "I only have protection here." The obvious question was, protection from what? But our first instinct was to figure out why he felt protected here. I scanned the area with my smaller flashlight, looking at the surrounding trees, and then I saw it. Every single tree in the immediate vicinity had the same strange symbol carved into its bark. I realized he was unwilling to leave this small circle of protection he had created. Ranger Haskins saw it too. He knew the man wasn't going anywhere, so he confirmed it with him. "So if we go find him where you pointed, you'll stay here so we can come back and get you?" The man nodded, but it was a strange, unsettling nod. It was as if this was exactly what he wanted, but for all the wrong reasons. I couldn't figure out his motives, but he seemed almost giddy about the idea. Even though we were right there, offering him help, it was like he was saying, "You go find him, then come back for me?" Yes, that would make me very happy. He pointed again, with more enthusiasm this time. "He's right over there, just past those rocks." He was genuinely excited for us to find Mason. We aimed our flashlights in that direction and saw that the trees with the carved symbols stopped about 30 feet short of where he was pointing. We huddled together for a moment. "Okay, you're going to stay right here?" We asked him one more time. "Yes, he's right over there," he replied, practically bouncing with excitement. This made me incredibly nervous. He was too eager. My mind started to race. Maybe he had done something horrible to Mason, and he was excited for us to discover his gruesome work. I could tell the others were thinking the same thing. We kept our eyes on the man, who remained perfectly still, just as he'd promised. We started walking in the direction he had indicated, my eyes scanning the ominous symbols on the trees. I braced myself for what we might find behind that large rock. We were still climbing uphill, and this time we didn't split up. We stayed as close together as possible. We decided to go around the right side of the rock. I cautiously peeked my head around the edge, hoping to see Mason just huddled there, cold and exhausted, but okay. But what we saw when we rounded that massive boulder and shone our flashlights into the clearing behind, it made no sense. At first, it was a pure jump scare. I thought it was a trap. We were looking at a bear. It wasn't a huge grizzly, but it was a decent-sized black bear, and it was sleeping. My first thought was that this was some kind of sick joke. The man had sent us here knowing there was a bear, and he was getting a kick out of it. We all instinctively grabbed each other, startled, expecting the bear to wake up and charge us. We fumbled for our bear spray, but the bear didn't move. It didn't even stir. The ranger stomped his foot a few times, hard enough to wake any sleeping animal. He let out a short, loud shout. Nothing. The bear remained motionless. So now we were thinking, okay, it's a dead bear. That guy back there is just insane. He saw a dead bear and thought it was our friend. We started to circle the animal, but then I noticed a slight rise and fall of its chest. It was breathing, just barely. It wasn't dead. There was a small amount of blood matted in the fur around its belly. As we got all the way around to its head, I could see that its eyes were open. It looked completely paralyzed. There was a little bit of blood, but it was hard to tell where it was coming from. As I looked closer, I could see its chest moving, but the animal itself looked lifeless. I couldn't make sense of it, but Cody did. There's something inside of it," he whispered. Ranger Haskins agreed. "It's not alive," he said. "There's something in there." We all crouched down, aiming our lights at the bear's stomach. Through the thick, matted fur, we could see a clean, straight slice running all the way from the base of its neck down to its tail, as if someone had field dressed it. My first thought was, where are its guts? If a hunter had done this, the internal organs would be somewhere nearby. But the thought I should have been having was, what is breathing inside of it? I was frozen, completely unsure of what to do. We were staring at the carcass of a bear, But Ranger Haskins, with more experience in these matters, had a stronger stomach. He walked over to the bear, pulling out a large hunting knife, just in case. He grabbed a handful of fur just above the long incision on the bear's belly and lifted it up, peeling it back to show us what was inside. The cut was incredibly precise. This wasn't the work of an average hunter tearing through a thick hide. This was almost surgical. It was so smooth, with hardly any blood, and there were no intestines to be seen. As he held the flap of skin and fur open, revealing the inside of the bear's rib cage, we saw him. It was Mason. He was curled up in a tight fetal position inside the bear's body cavity. His eyes were closed, and he was hugging his knees, as if he had killed the bear and crawled inside its carcass for warmth. He looked like he was sleeping. I looked at his face, his head, his hands. His fingers, wrapped around his knees, looked thinner than I remembered, almost skeletal, as if he had frostbite that was revealing more of the bone structure beneath the skin. They looked unnaturally long. Then I looked at his head. He seemed to have a bad infection around his forehead, right where he had been wearing the headband. It looked as if the headband had somehow melted into his skin. The area around it was changing color, becoming paler, closer to the color of the leather itself. And then I saw the symbol on the band, the same one I had joked about, the one that looked like it was from a ninja cartoon. It was the exact same symbol the other man had been carving into all the trees. And in that moment, everything clicked into place with a horrifying clarity. That was the skin he was talking about. That was the skin Mason had stolen from him. And I thought about the gruesome circular laceration on the other man's arm. I felt sick to my stomach. "I think that headband is made from the other guy's skin," I blurted out, thinking I had just solved the puzzle. But Ranger Haskins shook his head. "No, it's not," he said, his voice grim. "You guys didn't tell me he was wearing that." And now I knew for sure he was hiding something. We both stared at him. "What are you talking about? Why would we mention it?" "It's just a headband." He looked at us, his eyes wide with a fear I hadn't seen before. "That's not just a headband," he said. "That's the skin of a rake. It's never, ever supposed to touch human skin. You're supposed to wear it over your clothes," he explained, "to ward off other rakes. It's a warning to them. They can sense it, but if it touches your bare skin, it starts to spread." Then we watched in horror as Ranger Haskins took his knife, reached into the bear's carcass, and carefully slid the blade under the headband that was now fused to Mason's forehead. He worked it underneath until it was all the way through, then used it as a lever to pry the band off Mason's head. He pulled it out, dangling it from the tip of his hunting knife, making absolutely sure it didn't touch his own hand. As he held up what we had mistaken for a simple leather headband, Mason let out a blood-curdling, inhuman scream. It sounded like a mountain lion shrieking, like an elk in rut. He didn't move as he made the sound. His mouth just opened, and this ungodly noise poured out of him. In the middle of the scream, Ranger Haskins grabbed Mason's ankle and dragged him out of the bear's carcass. The moment he was clear of it, the screaming stopped. We looked down at him. He was starting to twitch, as if he was slowly coming to. There was a massive, bloody laceration circling his forehead where the headband had been. And then, in the distance, we saw them. 3 lights scurrying through the forest. They stopped about 50 feet away, hovering behind the trees, all moving in perfect unison, as if they were observing us. They were clearly reacting to the scream. They had heard it, and they had come to investigate. We whispered to Ranger Haskins, "Do we run?" This was exactly the scenario he had warned us about. But apparently, the rules had changed. "Don't move," he commanded. He opened his backpack, which was lying on the ground beside him, and dropped the headband inside, zipping it shut. We were now in a tense standoff with these floating lights, which seemed to possess some kind of intelligence, some clear intention, even though they were just points of light. Ranger Haskins said, "If they get any closer, we're going to have to split up. We stood there, frozen, until we heard a sudden thud and a grunt. We spun around to see Ranger Haskins on his back, and the naked man from earlier was on top of him, frantically digging through his pockets, screaming, "Give me my skin! Give me my skin!" This time, we didn't hesitate. Cody and I immediately grabbed the man, one on each arm, and threw him as far as we could, just to create some space. Ranger Haskins scrambled to his feet. Now we were in a standoff with this man, with Mason still lying motionless on the ground between us. We waited to see what his next move would be. But his next move was as unpredictable as everything else he had done. He took off sprinting, not at us, but towards the lights. He ran directly at them, screaming things like, "I did what you asked. Take me. Take me now." And he just kept running, fueled by that same limitless stamina. The lights faded into the distance, and he vanished after them, his desperate pleas echoing in the darkness. We were left standing over Mason, who had a gruesome circular wound on his forehead, next to the perfectly butchered carcass of a bear. The only thing we could do was try to wake Mason up, so that's what we did. Over the next 10 or 15 minutes, he slowly started to come around. It was just like the first time he had woken up after our fight. He was apologetic and sincere. What happened? He kept asking. He was terrified, hyperventilating and crying. "I don't know what happened," he sobbed. "Where am I? How did I get here?" We went back and retrieved the clothes we had tossed at the other man. We gave him a shirt and some shorts. He was obviously still freezing. We didn't want to put anything on his head because of the open wound, so we each gave him a piece of our own clothing to help keep him warm. We then had to help him all the way back down that steep, treacherous hill to our campsite. Once we were there, we packed up our things as quickly as we could, got him onto the horse, and began the long hike back to the main campgrounds in the dead of night to get him the medical attention he desperately needed. Once we were finally back at the main camp, and Mason was being looked after by the medical staff, they were cleaning and dressing the wound on his head, giving him painkillers. We finally had a moment to talk to Ranger Haskins alone. He assured us that Mason was incredibly lucky and that he was going to be okay. But we still had so many questions. What was all that? We asked him. Ranger Haskins just looked at us, his face grim. "The lights are the skin," he said cryptically. We pressed him. "Let's start with the skin. What are you going to do with it?" He replied, "We have protocols for things like this. I'll take it where it needs to go." What was it doing to him, we asked. He took a long, deep breath. "The simplest way I can explain it," he said, "is that the skin of a rake is contagious. If it comes into direct contact with you, you'll eventually become one." Cody then asked the question that was on my mind. "Then what were the lights? If the danger was the headband, why were you so afraid of the lights?" The ranger shook his head. "I wasn't lying to you," he said. "I truly don't know what they are. But whatever they are, they seem to be assisting in the transformation that was happening to your friend. After all," he said, looking us dead in the eyes, "who do you think made that perfect cut in the bear's belly?" Another name lost to the wilderness. Subscribe before the next one disappears.